We have been following 30-second rule, which means that every time you have something brilliant, or at least you think that it's brilliant, you should try to take the first action as quickly as possible. So we gave a call from that package belt to the Prime Minister's office and said that we have the best possible education celebration project for Finland, and it's called 100 schools. And to our surprise, they were saying, could you come in next Thursday and explain this more into detail? And we were looking to each other at the airport, completely jet lagged, and we were thinking, oh boy, we have to put a deck together.
100 connected minds for human flourishing.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful planet that we share together. Welcome to the 100 Connected podcast. We are back with a brand new season 2. And what an incredible first season we have had. It has been such a joy to prepare and record the episodes with so many inspiring educational innovators, such as Nakia Ibrahim from Scenario, Sonal Kapoor and Jaswinder Singh from Protsahan India Foundation, Siri Abrahamsen from Gleding, just to name a few. And oh my goodness, what amazing guests we have had. And what a joy also to listen to the episodes. I even listened to them myself while going for a run or high rocks training, during a hike or in the car on my way to work. Yeah. So I did listen to all the episodes, even though I heard all the conversations firsthand. And let's not forget the bonus episodes we've had that came out in July as a special vacation treat, featuring us, the 100 Connected podcast crew. And those turned into such valuable conversations. Well, our conversations are always valuable, and I heard them. I heard us. And speaking of valuable, it's almost impossible to put into words what the 100 Foundation and community mean to us, and how deeply grateful we are to be part of it. And thanks to 100, we as educational innovators and game changers in the world of education feel so seen and heard and valued and inspired. It really can feel lonely at times, and even also like your effort is just like a single drop on an ever-growing surface. But thanks to 100, all those drops, they come together. And together, they create a ripple that turns into real impact worldwide. So 100 is that extra fuel that gives us the strength to swim against the current and to drive meaningful change. And thanks to that powered energy of 100, some of the most meaningful shifts in education are happening. Not only inside schools, but far beyond. 100 really is the beating heart of this powerful movement where we roll up our sleeves together and we strive for human flourishing. And that is why today feels so special, because with us is the one who has been there right from the beginning, whose vision and commitment have helped make 100 what it is today. So give it up for Lasse Leponiemi, the co-founder and current chair of the 100 Foundation. Lasse, we are so grateful, beyond grateful, that you are here with us. And to start things, to kick it off, could you hop in a time machine and take us back to the very beginning, like the birth of 100? So where did the idea come from? And how did it all begin?
Thank you, Annette. I don't know if you were trying to get me emotional, laughing and crying at the same time with this very flattering introduction. Thank you for that. I have been sometimes saying that I arrived to the office before the furniture, meaning that being co-founding something like 100 in a work of a decade now. So the organization itself was established in 2012. And the concept or the idea for 100 was born in 2015. So it's decade of work today as we are seeing the organization evolving to different directions. And the initial phase for 100 was when we were coming back with my co-founder Saku Tuominen from New York, when we started to discuss that Finland is turning 100 years old in a couple of years of time. And while we were flying in a plane, we were getting more and more excited about the fact that Finland is getting 100 years old and we should somehow celebrate this independence, also from the education point of view. So during that 7 to 8 hour flight, we came up with a concept that what if we would highlight and celebrate 100 Finnish innovative schools and their solutions as a part of the celebration year. By the time when we were collecting our luggage from the baggage belt at the airport, we had the first iteration of HundrED ready. The first concept was made, and we have been following 30-second rule with Saku, which means that every time you have something brilliant, or at least you think that it's brilliant, you should try to take the first action as quickly as possible. So we gave a call from that package belt to the Prime Minister's office and said that we have the best possible education celebration project for Finland, and it's called 100 schools at the time. And to our surprise, they were saying, could you come in next Thursday and explain this more into detail? And we were looking to each other at the airport, completely jet-lagged, and we were thinking, oh boy, we have to put a deck together because we didn't have anything else than just the idea at the point. Then fast forward half a year, we were provided the opportunity to be part of the official celebration projects of Finland for 2070, and then that's how the actual idea for HundrED was then coming to alive. And that's exactly how we started as well. So we identified 100 educational solutions from Finland. We packaged them as innovations. We were celebrating them across the world. We did something like 50 keynotes in different countries. And while we were celebrating the Finnish education system and the Finnish teachers and the schools, people came to us and asked, why wouldn't you do this globally? This is wonderful. Could you also highlight these educators from Singapore or wherever we were? And then we thought about that maybe for 5 seconds and said, yes, why not? So for 2018, like for the year of 2018, the first 100 Global Collection was announced. And then that's how the more international and more global work of HundrED started back then. And sometimes I have been laughing that we might be the biggest failure of all the celebration projects for Finland because we never knew how to stop. And now we are approaching also an interesting milestone, since in 2027, Finland is going to be 110 years. So do we need to change the branding? So will we be 100 plus 10? Or what is going to happen? But that's the story behind of HundrED. We were supposed to be a celebration project for Finland, celebrating its centenary independence in 2017.
It got completely out of hand, and we love it.
Yes, that's something what I see as a pattern in my actions. I guess they tend to get out of the hands at some point.
Keep doing that, please.
So may I share with you how incredible it has been for me and my organization to be on that list? And I think what really struck me from your story now, how you share about Finland being 100 and when you guys decided on 100. I don't know if the Finnish are as aware as the rest of the world how much of an export and a famous product for Finland itself education is. Like, I'm from South Africa, so maybe I guess if we're talking wild animals, if we're talking rugby, then, South Africa, that's our export product. But a real famous export, I guess of obviously of Finland is education. And so wherever I go, it really helps for people to position what HundrED is when I'm like, it's a Finnish institution because you're so well recognized for education. Tell us a little bit more about how did Finland become this thing? What is the history of, you've shared now that Finland is a mere 100 years of independence. Where does that status come from? How did Finland get to where it is today? Finland and the rest of Scandinavia as such leaders in education. And I'm asking because the world is so desperate for education reform and education change. There's really such urgency around this. We always refer to Ken Robinson, and he famously almost 20 years ago did that TED talk about education reform being so urgent. I don't think we're as far along as we need to be. Tell us more a little bit about how Finland gets us there and how Finland can potentially lead us into this future as a nation. Why are you guys so fantastic at education?
Let's first start about the history of the Finnish education system, and I will not go to the ancient times, but we have to rewind to 60s.
Okay.
Because something really, really important happened back then. Finland was recovering from the Second World War. We had to build the whole country back together. And one of the things that the Finnish society realized very quickly was that we have to be able to increase the value of our cross-domestic product, meaning we have to do something that is really, really valuable. So therefore, Finland was seeing education as a main area of investment to increase the competency and the capacity of the nation. Because eventually, we all are the sum of our own skills and competencies. So Finland was very heavily starting to invest in education, and very strong public education system was born from 50s to 60s. If we are looking at the quality of that education, it was mediocre at its best. So it was not known to be the very high quality education back then. But what happened during those years was that the education and the schools and teachers, they were valued very highly, especially in the smaller towns or villages where there were a public school. There might have been only a couple of people who were having like academic training, and those were usually doctor, priest, and teacher. So therefore, when people wanted to know about something, they went to one of these and asked for help and support. So for that reason, teachers were very highly valued in the Finnish society, and we have kept that throughout the times. Then the second important thing what happened in the Finnish education system is actually a very negative thing for Finnish society. In 90s, we had a big recession, and we were having really, really difficult time to come up with the resources for education system and to all the social services that we are providing as a nation. And that's the time when I was in a public school, in a primary school. And, they were giving us erasers and they were asking us to halve them so that everybody could have one. Or they were giving us this kind of like a normal pencils, and they were halving those as well so that everyone could get one. So, that's how challenging it was in terms of resourcing. The reason for that one was that the Soviet Union collapsed in the end of this, and there were a lot of bilateral trade between Finland and Soviet Union at the time, and it took some time for Finland then once again start building those relations and to turn more to the West. And therefore coming to member of the European Union in 95 and joining Euros as one of the first nations in 2000. So there was like this big movement towards the European societies and the European economy at the time. And while Finland as a country were going through this time, the Ministry of Education and Finnish National Agency for Education realized that we don't have the same resources than we used to have. We are not able to provide similar kind of guidelines to the schools and the municipalities anymore. We have to give power to the municipalities and to schools to decide by themselves so that we can save some costs. Then surprisingly what happened, the municipalities were really, really eager to take this responsibility because they were able to contextualize the curriculum. They were able to contextualize the learning opportunities for their own students and their own student body. And then all of a sudden, when we are going fast forward 5 to 10 to 15 years, we are seeing that those principles were kept as a part of the Finnish education decision-making policies. So it's very much collaborative still. Our national curriculum is more like a guidelines for the municipalities, which are creating their own versions of those curriculums. And then the schools can further adapt those to fit their own needs and the students that they are having. And I think that is the key reason why also Finland was then not only having very strong PISA results from the academic subjects, but the Finnish education system was also seen as a very resilient during the COVID times, because there was so much freedom to make right kind of decisions at the right time in the municipalities and cities when we were, for example, adapting to the COVID regulations and things like that. So then that's the second reason why the Finnish education system is so strong. Then the third reason is that it has been created in a way that we try to avoid dead ends, meaning no matter what is your entry point to the education system, there is always a way to continue your learning journey. So you can switch between, let's say, academic training and vocational training. You can switch between universities of applied sciences and the science-based universities, you are able to kind of like find your way through the system. Because what matters the most for a small nation like us is that everybody would be able to work on a level that they are able to, be their best. And that has been the way how the Finnish education system has been developed.
That's so insightful. Thank you. I think one of the things that really stands out from your story is that HundrED being rooted in Finland is so much a part of it. And the lesson, even for someone like myself as an education innovator, is that education itself can be also financially thriving. There is something around how you have valued teachers as a nation that is such an example, I think, to other nations as well.
What I really loved about what you said, Lasse, it is the agency and the ownership of educators, of schools, of municipalities, that they can really see and hear and feel what their learners need. That is the part that I'm just like, it just makes my heart so happy. And I wish that for all countries in the world, that they look at that. And this is the first time that I've actually heard someone explain to me what it truly is that makes education in Finland so amazing. And I'm in Norway, so we're not too far away from each other. And often that is being said about Scandinavian countries being like so ahead of time, or whatever, how they call it. But I don't see that here in Norway at all. Do not think we can compare ourselves to each other, Norway and Finland, because that agency is not really thriving here. It is coming slowly though, but it's still very much one system being placed on all the schools. So that is very interesting for me to hear that whole story behind that. And I'll do my very best to make things like that happen here in Norway too. So thanks for that.
But it's a journey as well. When we were starting to work with the Finnish National Agency for Education, and in a core curriculum that was announced in 2016, almost 10 years ago, one of the key aspects was a collaborative teaching. And I remember when we were visiting many of these Finnish schools around the country, in one school there were this older history teacher who said to me that, "Listen, young man, why would I share my best practices with anyone? This is my memory stick. Everything I have ever done as a teacher is here. And why would I let anyone else to use it?" So, there in every single country or in every single system where we are bringing this more collaborative approach, we have to work a lot with the values, and we have to work a lot to create that kind of safe environment where you can experiment new things, where you can be vulnerable, so you don't have to be hiding in your own classroom and doing your own stuff there, but you can rather share that with others and develop together and improve the whole system from ground up, or to make the system to be relevant also in the future. Because if we are keeping it like it is today, it's going to be old-fashioned in some period of time. And I think that's the key learning for me and for us as a HundrED, that we are never ready. It's a continuous process that we should have in education systems, but elsewhere in our lives as well, so that we try to improve as a human beings, as a systems, and we try to do our best so that we can help others to flourish as well.
Yeah, so not just a safe environment, but I think also a brave environment, right? And really find that hard language of that teacher with that memory stick. What makes him like being open enough and brave enough and safe enough to share that, or to be open-minded enough.
Exactly, because I think that the one thing he would have been most afraid of is that somebody would have said, "But well, listen, this might not be good enough anymore. You have to further develop your materials. They cannot be anymore like they were in early 90s." So I think like that's the key, that when the whole world around us is coming more transparent, so is the education, and so is the public service becoming more and more transparent around the world. And that's also the world where our students, the young ones, will be living. During the last couple of years, we have had multiple different news stories where, something decades old have been exposed, because the world is becoming more transparent. So we have to take the responsibility of our actions, not only now, but also in the future, meaning that if we are doing something that should not be visible to anyone, that will be exposed at one point. And I think that's something that I hope that the younger generations would also learn, that we need to be accountable for the decisions that we have done today.
I think this story is an excellent example of how constraints build creativity as well. Lasse, you talked about the hardship that fell on Finland, and then you look to the people, and it is a beautiful story to illustrate that. And I really love hearing that. I'd also love to hear a little bit more about your experience as a child going through the system, to ground this in your own experience. What was it like for you moving through, let's just call, however you want to define education? How was your educational experience? Which is ongoing, of course, but let's look at it through the K-12 lens.
Yeah, this is a lifelong sentence, I guess, for all of us. We have to be learning day after day. I enjoyed school. I was also quite good at school. Most of the time I was quite bored at school. So it's a bit of a like mixed experience for me. And I had an excellent teacher, Finnish teacher, the literature teacher, who found or encouraged me to further develop my writing and the way how I can express myself in writing. And I think that came to be quite a big part of my own identity for years to come, so that I was really, really motivated to learn more about languages, how the language can describe a culture, how it can shape the way how we think, how we see the world around us. And then that made me later on very much interested in psychology, and then the development psychology of young people and the future orientation of young people. But I track all that back to be interested in language, which might be a little bit odd, but it opened up like these new worlds for me. And then the future orientation of a young people is something that it's something that I have kept as a part of my core interest areas all the way through. So that's one of the key reasons why I'm so motivated and excited to work for HundrED, because I believe that through these education innovations that we are able to highlight, we are able to open up more positive futures for the young people. So one of the key questions for me has always been like, why do some young people see that their life is a struggle, whereas someone else with exactly similar kind of background, similar kind of skills and competencies and cognitive abilities might be seeing the life full of opportunities. And then that's a lot about mindset and the way how we are understanding the world around us. So that's kind of like the main reason for me why so many of my actions throughout the years have been focusing on providing opportunities for growth, and especially growth in a mental sense. I think that will then unlock all the rest of it as well. But yeah, but for me, to really answer to your question, I had a positive experience at a school. For me, it was oftentimes a little bit easy, and which gave me a lot of nice extra time to do all kind of other stuff during the classes. I was very active then in the student organizations, and I found my way to work in the school committees, all the way to the upper secondary school student union here in Finland, where I was serving as a vice president in 2005. And that's also the first time I was ever introduced to the work of the ministry and the Finnish National Agency for Education. So somehow then, it became to be my professional career as well. I have tried to escape the education sector a couple of times, failing miserably every single time, and I have been pulled back in, which is fantastic, because I think that I find my calling in the education sector.
And you talked about motivation. What's your primary motivation?
Supporting every child to flourish no matter what happens in life. And I think that's the HundrED mission as well.
Thank you.
I love how you've described your childhood, and I hope that I'm correct in how I understand HundrED, and is also that it is part of this quest of trying to reimagine education. I mean, at large, in the world that we're living in, the industrial education model is still kind of internationally in place, right? And what HundrED does every year is it kind of seeks for these most innovative solutions that move the needle in whatever way. And when you describe your own experience of school, it made me think about what I've read so often is that the vast majority of children in the industrial model that still exists in the world, because we educate children along age, and we say all 7-year-olds should be here, then half the class is bored because they are ahead and they're ready to move, but half the class is struggling and they're confused and they're not keeping up. And so the teacher is teaching for whom, right? And that's the question. We don't have the full answer, but the question is, how does education start to move drastically and radically forward to a new innovative model of what it should look like? I mean, one of the things is we teach on age, we often gender split. I know they don't do that in Finland. Subjects are separated and there's all sorts of things that are in place. So when we start to talk about education innovation, I've read a lot and looked into what you've said and what your personal view is. And one of the terms that came up is flexible learning. And I love that. And I have an interpretation of what I think that means in terms of flexible learning and some examples internationally of people doing what I think is flexible learning. But please share with us and the listeners what your flexible learning concept is all about and how you could imagine it.
Blended, flexible, non-linear. I think like those are the key terms that I would like to often use when describing the learning or the pedagogical models that I personally believe in. I fully agree what you are saying that, when we are trying to provide a very linear model of learning, we are often failing both of the ends. We are failing the upper end who would be willing to go further, but we are also then failing the lower end of the students who would benefit a lot of having like a different kind of support as a part of their own learning journey. And then that can easily take us also to the inclusivity or inclusive education discussion, where often the inclusivity in terms of education system is seen in a very narrow way, in a politicized way, whereas we should understand that it's actually a holistic way of approaching and including every single learner to that journey and help the whole system to thrive, and not only looking at those medians of our, our assessment data, which is just providing a glimpse what the learning situation might have been on a very limited number of factors on a given time. And I think this is the biggest challenge of the learning systems that we are having today. We should always remember that every education system is contextual. They are always created as a part of political processes. So they are political systems by nature, which then of course affects to the decision-making models when we are shaping these systems to be better. Therefore, my argumentation is often actually against reimagining the system, because as long as we are talking about a political system, we know that it's really, really difficult to build it like from ground up to be something completely new. I think it's more efficient for us to identify entry points that we can change today, and then one by one changing those arrows to point to the right direction. And that's how we can make the big ship turn without people not maybe even noticing it, that it's changing its direction. And I think the key for building, or not building, but supporting the students to be future-ready citizens, is that we are able to make them be comfortable in situations which are volatile, unpredictable, and frustrating. Because those are usually the key challenges that we will face as a human beings, every now and then. And the ones who are able to have the social emotional balance, and those are skills and competencies that we can provide for the young people, they are the ones who are surviving these situations the best. And when we are combining those skills and competencies with the ability of learning, then we have a possibility to adapt to different situations without knowing what we should be actually learning when we are getting into that situation. And I think that is part of the curiosity that we see in very young kids when they are learning to walk and they are learning new skills day in, day out. they have absolutely no faintest idea what they should be doing, to switch on and off the lights or, doing different kind of things. They are just experimenting and they are learning by trying out things. And somehow we often lose that ability to be open to the opportunities that we are seeing around us. But I think like that describes my approach of to the learning. So I see that we are very much social emotional beings, that we should never leave those two things away from our curriculums when we are learning the more technical skills and competencies, and those that social emotional skills and competencies are providing the foundation for us to go through the test of times, but also to be joyful and celebrate when there is a reason for that, so that we are not feeling anxiety in those situations. Because I think like those two, once again, when everything is happening as expected, it's very easy for us as human beings. We have been built in a way that we hope to, remain the status quo. But when we are facing something really fortunate in our life, or when we are figuring out our way through a challenging time, those are then the moments when the social emotional skills and competencies come to a play. Until sadly, those are not very often part of the national curriculum. So they are in this kind of like a very narrow niche position, whereas they are the things that can unlock the full potential from all of us.
And I love how you refer to learning how to walk or learning how to sit or how the light switches on and off. And if we use that, like that experimental kind of learning, right? There's no like time for that. It doesn't say like when you're 8 months old, you need to be able to do that. Or when you're 13 months old, you need to be able to walk or whatever. All children do that at their own pace and through their own curiosity and their own readiness, right? We look when they are ready for the next step and we try to support them, but they just have to learn and like get back up and try again. And that resilience is also growing, and the confidence and the competence. So that is so interesting. And I always feel like
Yes,
when we that with us also to when they're older, when we keep that in mind, that we trust the process, that they will learn, but we need to meet them where they are. We can't learn them how to run if they can't even sit, right? So the readiness-based learning is, I think, brilliant.
I'd
yes,
also
and
like
then it
to,
should not be easy. It's never easy. It's really, really frustrating at the times. Like Alex is always laughing to me when I'm trying to pronounce the easiest words in French. And no matter how hard I try, I feel that I'm not getting any closer, to get it right. So that is kind of like the nature of learning. It kind of like it pushes us outside of our comfort zone, and we have to be exploring the vulnerability within us. And if we are not ready to meet that vulnerability within us, we will closing ourselves out from those learning opportunities. And then what sometimes makes me a little bit sad is when I'm looking at all the AI and EdTech solutions that we are seeing around us. They are still often following the very linear idea of learning. But whereas I'm still seeing that if we would be utilizing, let's say, AI in a good, in-depth way to our learning systems, to, for example, support teacher to identify different kind of learners in their classrooms, providing tips and hints how to address these learners, providing different kind of examples that can then meet the learner where they are. And that's the way how we can personalize and adaptize the learning opportunities for the people. But frankly, I'm not believing too much, at least not yet, to fully develop learning opportunities. Actually, on a contrast, we are seeing that for example, when young people with kind of fundamental age and they are interacting, let's say, with the chatbots, the chatbots are completely missing out at this frustration and different kind of like social emotional factors that might be part of the messaging. And they are providing this quite authoritarian way of explaining things and not really being open for exploring and supporting the learner to find their way by themselves. So there is like a lot to do in this kind of capacity building when we are thinking about the new learning software and learning opportunities. So then at the same time, when we are looking at the latest RCTs from African context, Nigeria, if I remember the country correctly, the RCTs were showing that the students who did not have good access to education and they were provided AI-driven access for learning some fundamental skills, they were able to master those skills better than the average of the students. So then it's a big moral and ethical question to us, that do we see that still there is more value for providing that kind of learning opportunity for them so that they can learn the fundamental skills. But simultaneously, we need to be understanding that we are also deciding that they might not be able to develop their social emotional skills in the same way than we would hope them to develop those. So there is it's not so black and white when we are thinking about how we can shape the world of education to be more equal and inclusive for all of us.
What I hear you talking about so beautifully are multiple truths, right? The ability to think one way and another, okay, and to hold both. And that's at the crux of social emotional learning, right? Is that you can feel sad and you can also understand joy, and you can know that they both exist, right? And I wonder about that very understanding, or moving that to all of this around AI, because what I keep hearing from youth is disappointment, just what you've said. What I'm hearing again and again from people is like, gosh, but it doesn't do this. And what that does for us is build our awareness, right? And then lean into one another. And that's the silver lining that I keep seeing around all of the AI stuff coming, is us feeling just, it's not quite there, and then turning to the person next to you. And I'm seeing that with kids, advocating for finding the balance. And if we can support that, we'll use it here, but nothing will ever replace the human connection. And I feel like that energy is growing. I'd love to know if others, on the call today feel that same way.
I mean, I've been gagging to just celebrate what you're saying as well, Lasse. It's just what we've been sharing so much about in this conversation, in this circle, in this community. I'm so for development, human development, and with that's going to be a lot of tech and a lot of AI and whatever that means. But simply sprinkling AI over things that are not fundamentally rethought and reimagined or re-understood is not going to fix it. And there's something bullish about it. There's something about it that's very capitalistic, and it really makes me quite sad. It's like a race for children's attention now again. Whereas fundamentally, I think there's a question around how do children best learn, and what do we want the outcome of learning to be, that starts to frame for me the question about what education should be. And when you told the story about your French pronunciation of words, I think in that story there's this beautiful thing, which is that you will never need to really speak French perfectly anymore in the world we're living in today. But the very thing of the learning process, when you sit with the discomfort, as you said, and you develop the patience, the grit, the perseverance, those social emotional skills, that in itself is more important now than tick, Lasse can say bonjour. It's those skills of sitting with our discomfort, persevering, exploring the softer skills of life that I think we know industry is calling for. Innovation, right? And yet there's the studies in the world that show us that if we continue to educate as we have, then we will educate children out of that capacity. You know the George Land study, the longitudinal study of looking at children entering school to when they exit, and how we've made them less and less and less and less socially, emotionally intelligent.
What we've been talking about here, where a lot of what learning is being able to be uncomfortable and wanting to work with that discomfort and finding the value in that. I want to ask you, Lasse, during this process, you've had a decade of HundrED almost, or coming up on it, right? Has there been a moment of frustration that has taught you something about education innovation, about supporting innovators around the world, about yourself in all of this that you would like to share with us? That's been something that you've learned
multiple times. There have been moments during this 12 years when I have had like 2 papers on my desk. One is a plan how to bring all of it down in a more or less controlled way. And the another paper is about how to kind of like increase and make the organization to be bigger and better. And I would believe that this year, for example, has been like that for many of the organizations in the sector, where we have been going through massive transformations in education, development aid, and like the whole world is sometimes feeling it's turning upside down. And still we find the meaning and calling from our daily actions, and we keep coming back to these things. And I believe that as long as we are finding the meaning of the work we are doing in a way bigger than we are by ourselves, it makes it easier. And in those moments, of course, at sometimes you question your own sanity, like why I'm doing this. This feels almost impossible. And why would anyone believe in something as crazy as I like celebrating 100 education innovations year after year and being part of this journey? And then one day you find someone who does. And then all of a sudden things are starting to click and you are finding the way forward. There was a book about building new organizations and successful organizations. And if I remember correctly, the key reason why many of the startup companies, which might be brilliant, are failing is the moment when the founder or the team of founders are losing their trust or they are not anymore believing in what they are doing. I can very easily relate to that because as long as you are believing that you are doing the right thing and you are seeing a community like ours around us, which is supporting us to do that journey together with us, it makes it very easy to believe in it and then also go through those challenging times or decisions, because I think that the collective power and impact that we have been able to build during the last 10 years, it's much bigger in a way than those in the end small decisions we have to be doing. But it doesn't make it any easier to make those decisions when the times are challenging. And we are going to publish, and I guess at the time when this podcast is coming out, the report about innovator resources is already published. And in that report, we are seeing that how many organizations during this year have been facing different kind of challenges. What makes me wonder is the amount of apathy that we were seeing some of the results. And I think that might happen when people find it difficult to find joy and positive news, colleagues, friends that could be supportive during these hard decisions. And I'm hoping that the HundrED community itself could be this kind of community to each other, so that we are finding ways forward together and supporting each other when we are figuring out what there is going to be next.
Well, that is exactly how I think all of us, if I can speak for all of us, feel about HundrED. That community sense, that community feeling, and the way we all felt so seen and heard and celebrated. So all those struggling moments, all those frustrating moments that we feel a bit stuck, you are the energy, you are the power that just keeps us moving. So the big movement, that big ripple will keep happening in the world of education and much more than that. So thank you so much, Lasse, for all that you have done, that you do and will do. We are, what I said before, beyond grateful that you were here on episode 1 of season 2 of the HundrED Connected podcast with us.
And a little correction to that. It's not only me, it's this wonderful team around us. So no one of us could do any of this alone. This is something that we are doing collectively. So the thank you goes back to you all. Also, beyond this podcast meeting room, every single person who has been part of the HundrED community should be also thanked for their actions, because without all of you, we would not be able to do the work we are doing today. So my thank you to all of you as well.
The HundrED Connected podcast is a creation of the Connection Committee, Annette de Graaf, Cherrelle Druppers, Hanneke, Mackie, and Lindsay Stewart, and is produced by HundrED and edited by me, Alex Shapero. Learn more about HundrED, its innovations, and our community by visiting our website at HundrED.org.